Like it or not, the College Football Playoff Committee made a statement on Sunday by letting Alabama and Miami into the CFP field and keeping Notre Dame out. I firmly believe that the time is now for Notre Dame to join a conference, or at least consider joining a conference, and I'm going to explain why in this video. If you're new here, please subscribe to The Air with Brian Gregory. This channel is growing fast. We're building this thing brick by brick. It's a channel that breaks down college football, the NFL, and college basketball from a business standpoint, and I'd love for you to be a part of this community. So hit that subscribe button. I'd really appreciate it. Now, I want to make it clear that I've always been a proponent of Notre Dame being an independent team. It was actually one of the first videos that I ever made on this channel back in 2023, explaining the reasoning behind why Notre Dame is independent, and the logic makes sense. Notre Dame can keep all of the revenue for itself. They don't have to worry about splitting it with other conference members, and Notre Dame can have complete control of the construction of its schedule and the teams that they play. It all makes perfect sense, but I feel like that's being tested right now, and I felt like something shifted on Sunday when the CFP committee lets Alabama and Miami in and not Notre Dame. I feel like there is some embedded messaging that they would desire Notre Dame to join a conference, that's what they would prefer. The times are changing. The landscape of intercollegiate athletics is evolving. Private equity is becoming more and more involved in and a part of all of college sports. And teams simply have more leverage by being a part of a conference because those conferences become more and more wealthy every year just based on TV deals. They keep growing and they keep on adding teams. And so you just simply have more leverage as an organization, as a program, by being in a conference. And that's what the CFP was trying to illustrate here. And Marcus Freeman has even said it himself. Notre Dame will remain independent unless being independent boxes them out of the CFP and acts as a barrier. He even said on Bustin' with the Boys in an interview a few months ago, I want to say, that Notre Dame would join a conference if it ensures that it gets the same opportunities as every other school out there, and if it doesn't subject Notre Dame to unfair practices. And that's exactly what has happened this past weekend. Notre Dame being left out of this year's college football playoff was a nightmare scenario for Notre Dame's status as an independent team, because the Fighting Irish got put in a position where they were being evaluated against Alabama, a team that's in a conference and just played in their conference championship, and Miami, who's also in a conference and beat Notre Dame head-to-head this year. Like it or not, Alabama has a backbone. They have a leg to stand on in this scenario, because even though they got destroyed by Georgia in the SEC championship and they had that bad blemish loss to Florida State, they still played an SEC schedule, which is extremely challenging, and their resume this year includes 4 straight wins against AP top 25 ranked teams. So, in theory, they could afford that loss to Georgia. And they played in a conference championship, which is something that Notre Dame or Miami didn't do. And they played an extra game that those teams didn't have to worry about playing. Miami, they beat Notre Dame head-to-head. And like Alabama, they have a leg to stand on, and they have leverage by being in a conference. Notre Dame's best win this season was at home against USC, who's not even in the college football playoff. Do they have quality losses? Yes, and that's something that the College Football Playoff Committee takes into consideration, but they didn't have enough quality wins to outweigh the quality losses and give the College Football Playoff Committee enough of a reason to put them above Alabama and Miami. And the College Football Playoff Committee told you exactly what they think about Notre Dame's status as an independent school through this ruling, through this decision. The College Football Playoff Committee is just like any other business out there. It's a business that has to make decisions every day, every year, and those decisions come with ramifications. If you leave Alabama out, you run the risk of jeopardizing conference championships in the future. Those conference championships bring in a lot of money for conferences and provide a lot of exposure for companies who are sponsors in those games. If you leave Miami out, you diminish the value of head-to-heads. And I think that we can all agree that we enjoy watching those high-octane top 10 matchups early on in the season. And they bring in a lot of money for all the programs involved. They bring in a lot of money for TV networks because they are some of the games with the highest ratings in the entire season, in the entire regular season. So nobody wants to see those go away. If you leave Notre Dame out, you can send the message of, we want you to join a conference. And it makes sense. And I also can't help but think, if Notre Dame wasn't a conference in this situation, just theoretically say they were in the Big Ten, I think they could have gotten in. Say they were in the Big Ten championship. They played Ohio State. They lost, but they lost 24-17. They absolutely get in over Alabama. And Miami's head-to-head with Notre Dame is even diminished a little bit in the sense that I would put Notre Dame in over Miami. Yes, they beat them head-to-heads, but Notre Dame played in the conference championship, and Miami didn't. And that's something that the CFP clearly shows that they value. They show that playing in a conference championship matters, and they consider that. This is a very good Notre Dame team. Last year's team was a fantastic Notre Dame team. And they lost early on to Northern Illinois. They were able to rebuild their image as the season went on. And given the optics of the CFP going into December last year, Notre Dame was able to get in. And they made a run. They went to the national championship. I think that this year's team is fantastic as well, and absolutely could have gone on a run. But now we're never going to know because this team wasn't let into the CFP. And it's not the committee's fault. At the end of the day, they had a business decision to make, and I think that they made the decision that benefits their business and their image the most. They made the decision that has minimal risk. So if you're Notre Dame, this is something that you have to consider changing, and it's the exact scenario that Marcus Freeman articulated in that interview with Bussin' with the Boys, and when he was asked about if Notre Dame should join a conference. Being independent in this scenario served as a barrier to Notre Dame getting into the CFP, and whether it's fair or not, whether you view it as fair or not, Alabama had advantages over Notre Dame. Miami had advantages over Notre Dame that the CFP considered and valued, and that's why they were let in and Notre Dame wasn't. At the end of the day, this is a live by the sword, die by the sword situation. Notre Dame can decide to stay in a conference, and I won't hate the decision because they have a lucrative TV deal with NBC. They can pool all that revenue for themselves, and they can still have complete control over their schedule. However, you've got to understand that if you remain independent, you cannot be evaluated on the same plane. You cannot be evaluated in the same vein as teams like Alabama and Miami and Ohio State and Georgia and Indiana, who are in conferences and have to play the teams that they have to play because those teams have guidelines that they have to submit to by being in a conference, and Notre Dame doesn't have to. And also, Notre Dame has always been a team that hasn't needed a conference to be marketable. Their brand is just that poignant. I understand that. But this is a new world of college football that we're entering here, and I think that it would be wise for any logical Notre Dame fan out there and for any logical member of Notre Dame's athletic departments to at least consider joining a conference. Because now more than ever, with this 12-team playoff, it can be a huge selling point, and it can be a piece of leverage that you didn't have before. And these battles to get into the CFP, like that race between Bama, Miami, and Notre Dame, it all comes down to leverage. You need every single piece of leverage that you could possibly use to gain an edge on Alabama and on Miami. And by not having that conference affiliation, it essentially left Notre Dame dead in the water. They didn't have another chance to prove themselves. They didn't have a game to play this past weekend. And so it's just one more piece of supporting evidence that you don't have. And you need every bit of it that you can possibly muster up in situations like this. It's a new age of intercollegiate athletics. In the past, Notre Dame being independent always made sense, and it still somewhat does. But I would at least consider joining a conference, and not the ACC. I heard people talking about the ACC. Notre Dame is too good for the ACC. This is a Big Ten team. This is a top-tier program in the country with one of the best head coaches in college football. This team should be playing Ohio State and Michigan and Indiana and Oregon and USC every year. They belong in that conference. And the one thing that I will say here that I want to clarify, I don't agree with the way that Notre Dame was excluded from the CFP. They should have never been ranked above Alabama to begin with. Strategically and intentionally moving Notre Dame down in the rankings, even though they kept winning, was not a smart move by the committee, and I will not stand by that whatsoever. But even with that articulated, even with that factored into the equation, from a business standpoint, it's starting to make more sense now in this age of college football for Notre Dame to be in a conference, and in the same conference for all of sports. If you want to join the Big Ten, be the Big Ten for everything. Not Big Ten for this, ACC for this, Independent for this. Just be an overarching Big Ten team. That's my take. Let me know what y'all think about it in the comment section below, and thank you all for watching. Have a great day.